Welcome to WhatGear Reviews for another camera comparison shootout. Today it is the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra versus the DxOMark #1 rated phone, the Huawei P40 Pro, versus the People's Champ, the phone that you guys all wanted to see on the channel. It's the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, which I personally think is a cool name. What about you? Let me know in the comments below. And let's see how these phones perform when it comes to all the different types of photography. I'm going to be doing the night section at the end, and I think that might be one of the most interesting parts of the video. So make sure you stick around for that. You ready? Let's go. So at certain parts throughout this video, I did use the Sony Photography Pro mode to put it into Auto HDR. And I'll let you know which of the photos I used that mode in, but for the rest of it I used auto mode. Anyway, picture one, the Ninja Star. So I set this up with a tripod, and I had actually planned to film the video on how to use the Photography Pro mode, but it was so bright that day it was a bit difficult to do. But anyway, this is one of the photos from that video, which is coming soon. And you can see here the Samsung and the Huawei actually do a great job with the Auto HDR, which is something that the Sony doesn't do automatically. And essentially what you can see here is some areas of the Sony photo is slightly overexposed. The dark areas of the photo are very bright, whereas on the Samsung and the Huawei you've got these much darker shadows, more depth of color in the blue sky, and that is the result of the HDR mode. But then when you actually look at the photo, and when I was taking these photos, this is what I was thinking about, is which one of these photos is the most accurate to what I was seeing at that point in time. And because it was so bright, like I mentioned, you could make a case for the Sony actually being one of the more accurate. But if I lifted my eyes and looked at the sky, it would definitely be blue like you see on the other two photos. But if my focus was on the Ninja Star, then maybe that is the most accurate. It's very subjective. One thing I will say about the Huawei photo, it's a little bit dark and a little bit purple. The Sony seems a little bit green, and the Samsung seems a little bit soft there in the foreground, a little bit blurry on the bark of the tree. Let me know which one you like, and let's move on to picture two. So here's picture two, and it is the dog. Now literally I took the phones out of my pocket using auto modes and snapped these photos as quickly as I could before the dog moved. And my general observation of the three, going from left to right here, the Samsung is doing a fantastic job of picking up a lot of details. The focus was actually very good. I know a lot of people complained about the autofocus on the S20 Ultra, but I think the new updates might have fixed that, and you can really see that on the dog's face. The colors are pretty damn accurate if you ask me. Then if you look at the Sony photo, much softer image, and you can see there's a lot of natural blur in the background, which is quite nice. But it is losing a bit of that sharpness in the foreground, which is quite surprising because the auto mode still has the eye autofocus tracking, and when I was taking this photo it did look like it was doing that, but maybe the dog was moving her head at the time and it's caused a bit of blur there, so we've lost a little bit of detail. But I'm 100% sure if I had used the Photo Pro app and increased the shutter speed, this photo would be a million times better. And I'll talk more about the Photo Pro app later on in the video. And now if we look at the P40 photo, what we're seeing here is a massive adjustment when it comes to the white balance. It's a very warm photo. The dog's fur really isn't that dark sort of golden color. It's definitely a bit lighter like you're seeing on the Sony and the Samsung. But I do like that dramatic look. People love this phone because literally when you take a photo with it, it does these kind of enhancements, and it just kind of makes the images pop without you having to do anything with them. Now let's just zoom in a little bit and have a look at the details here, and you can see what I mean when it comes to the sharpness. Both the Samsung and the Huawei do a great job. The Sony, like I said before, I think the shutter speed was wrong when it comes to its auto mode. It could definitely do better than this. Anyway, next photo. So picture three, a colourful flower. So you can see here each phone has done something slightly different. On the Huawei, it's brightened up the image a lot. There was a lot of shade in the room when I took the photo, and the fact that we're seeing these really bright highlights and bright background is not actually what was happening at the time, but I do like the photo. On the Samsung, we're getting a pretty well balanced photo, a little bit of brightness going on here, but you can see the highlights are much more controlled. We're getting a lot more detail in the brightest areas of the photo, and I actually really like this image, especially when you look at the detail there at the center of the orchid. But when it comes to the most realistic photo here, I've got to give it to the Sony because it was dark in the room. the colors on the petals of the orchid were slightly more purple and less pink, and you're also getting great detail there at the center of the flower. So I actually think the Sony wins in this particular scenario. Let me know if you agree with that or not, and let me know why. So before we get into selfies and macros and HDR photos, let's do a little side-by-side video quality and stabilization test. Let's go. So now that you've seen the video quality on the three phones, let me know which one does the best when it comes to quality, and also let me know which one does the best when it comes to stabilization in your opinion. I have my own opinion. If you want to know what that is, ask me in the comment below and I'll get back to you. Now let's look at picture 4, macro mushrooms. So I found these growing in my garden and I thought this would be a good one for a macro shot. And the Samsung and the Huawei actually have a macro mode, whereas the Sony Xperia 1 Mark II just kind of recognizes when something's close, and you can definitely get closer to the subject on the Huawei and the Samsung than you can with the Sony. So I kept it all at the same distance to make this a fair comparison. So here's what we got. On the left hand side, the infamous autofocus issue on the Samsung seems to be present. We lost a lot of detail there, pretty much on all of the mushrooms. Few of them at the top of the screen. You can see actually where the blades of grass are a lot sharper. You can actually see the details on the mushrooms pretty good there. But the center part of the photo, which is the main part of the photo, we got a lot of blur, which is not great. If we look at the Sony photo, the colors are probably the most accurate. That is the color of the grass and the color of the mushrooms as I could see them. There was a lot of darkness there as well between the grass. So color accuracy, maybe the best on the Sony, but we do have a bit of blur there. And I personally think, again, this is down to the shutter speed that the auto mode on the Sony camera was using. As you learn more about photography and shutter speeds and ISOs and stuff like this, you can kind of see where the auto mode is going wrong. And honestly, it's got to be the shutter speed. My hand was probably just moving a bit too much for this photo. Now the Huawei P40 Pro Photo, to me, appears to be the best, especially when it comes to detail. When it comes to color accuracy, it's definitely brighter, and it seems to be something that the Huawei does every time. It brightens the image up a lot, and some people really love that, and I do like the final result we're getting here from the P40 Pro when it comes to its macro shot. Let me know which one you like best, and now let's move on to the next one. And this one I call post sunset because there's a post in the foreground and there's a sunset in the background. And keep in mind guys, I literally just pulled the phones out of my pocket, took this photo. I didn't tap on any part of the screen to adjust the focus area or adjust the exposure values. Literally, this is point and shoot. So here's what we got. On the left hand side on the Samsung, there's an amazing amount of detail there on the post. And actually I really like the way it kind of blurs into the background and how the sunset actually appears and the colors in the sky. It actually looks really nice. It's quite a powerful photo if you ask me. It's doing a great job of handling the backlight, even the way the orange is kind of highlighting down the side of the post. Fantastic. On the Sony, so this is one where I used the Photo Pro mode, switched on auto HDR, but all of the other settings like shutter speed and ISO were set to auto, and this is what we got. We got great detail in the foreground like the Samsung. I think the colors on the post a bit more realistic again. We're getting that blurriness in the background of the photo like the Samsung, which is nice, but you can see the brightest part of the photo, the sunset in the background, is a bit too overexposed, just a little bit. If it could just bring that down or enhance the oranges a bit more around there, you'd have a beautiful photo. But it does pretty well, but I think you can see here the auto HDR isn't quite as good as the Samsungs or the P40s. Now if we look at the P40, we can see the point of focus is actually more towards the back of the photo and not on the post at all, which also looks great in my opinion. The details in the sky there are by far the best. You've got this nice little lens flare coming off the sunset in the background there, and you can see it's handling that brightest part of the image perfectly. And even the tree on the right hand side, the way it's silhouetting perfectly, very sharp, really nice. Each photo has great attributes. I think when it comes to HDR, it's definitely between the P40 Pro and the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra. The Sony can do better, but again, it's one of these scenarios where you have to use the Photo Pro mode to unlock its full potential. And that's a video that I'm thinking about making for you guys. Let me know if you're interested in seeing that. Now let's take a look at an ugly mugshot of this dude. So this one's a selfie, and this one actually really surprised me. I didn't see this coming, but the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra seems to have delivered a really blurry picture. For some reason it's focused more on the background, and the plant behind me actually looks more in focus than my face. Really strange. I'm not sure why that happened. Again, I literally just took it out of my pocket, took the photo. Same thing with the Sony. And the Sony actually delivered probably the sharpest picture here and maybe the most natural skin tones. However, with that said, we're getting a bit too much of that brightness in the background. So basically the HDR is non-existent there in that photo. But it does a great job in the foreground. The color on my hoodie is great. The details on my face is great. And then when we look at the P40 Pro Photo, it's probably the most well balanced of all three. It's handled the backlight really well. You can see all of the details there behind me. I'm a bit darker in the foreground, but the details are there and the sharpness is there, and the colors are pretty accurate too. One thing also is worth pointing out here, guys, is the wide angle lens on the P40 Pro and Sony. It's a bit wider. You can see the sort of light thing above my head in the photo, whereas you can't see that on the Samsung. So we're getting a little bit more in the shot with the other two. Let me know what you thought of this result. And we're nearly ready for the night mode, but I just want to show you quickly the wide angled lens before we do that. Okay, so here's the primary camera shot, and all phones do really great here. Actually, when it comes to the sharpness of the lettering on the big glass, maybe the Samsung's the best, but then maybe again the Sony might be the most color accurate, and I think the Huawei is ticking all the boxes really. But check this out, this is the ultra wide lens. And this is pretty interesting because the Huawei for some reason spits out the photo in a different ratio when you use the wide angle. You can probably change this in the settings, but I didn't notice when I took the photo. I only realized now, but actually you can see it's pretty good, but it's definitely not as wide as the Sony or the Samsung. When it comes to the color tone, we got warmer here on the Sony. The table's way more orange, the beer is a lot more orange as well, and then on the Huawei we got this kind of greenish tint going on. But all three look great, and actually looking at this right now, when it comes to detail on the wide angled lens in the foreground, it's a win for the Huawei, and it's adding that kind of bokeh effect, that kind of blurry background effect, which is quite nice if that's what you're going for. The Sony actually captures great detail in the foreground and the background with its ultra wide, but the Samsung actually looks very detailed, especially on the subject of the photo, which is the beer in the front. So it's doing a great job there. All three phones have some great attributes when it comes to its ultra wide. Let me know which one you think won this one. And now let's move on to my favorite section, the night shootout. So the original plan was to do this all in one video, but this video has got so damn long that I feel like I should put it in a separate video for you guys to watch when it suits you better. Or you can watch it right now, thumbnails on the screen, and if you just subscribed, you're now one of the finest subscribers known to man, and I will see you guys in the next one. Don't be late.